Greetings from Project Therapy. So today we are celebrating Tamil Day in the memory of Douglas Adams, who wrote probably what is the greatest book in the galaxy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And we are reading aloud from the scripts of the original radio play, which played in March 1978 for the first time on the BBC. And this is the first time the word was introduced to a lot of people who have become legends since then. So, pick the first, in which the Earth is unexpectedly destroyed and the great hitchhike begins.
This is the story of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Perhaps the most remarkable, certainly the most successful book ever to come out of the great publishing corporations of Ursa Minor. More popular than the Celestial Home Care Omnibus, better selling than 53 More Things to Do in Zero Gravity, and more controversial than Oolong Kalufit's trilogy of philosophical blockbusters. Where God Went Wrong, some more of God's greatest mistakes, and who is this God person anyway? And in many of the more relaxed civilizations on the outer eastern rim of the galaxy, the Hitchhiker's Guide has already supplanted the great Encyclopedia Galactica as the standard repository of all knowledge and wisdom, because although it has many omissions, contains much that is apocryphal or at least wildly inaccurate, it scores over the older, more pedestrian work in two important ways. First, it is slightly cheaper, and second, it has the words "Don't Panic" inscribed in large, friendly letters on the cover. To tell the story of the book, it is best to tell the story of some of the minds behind it. A human from the planet Earth was one of them, though as our story opens, he no more knows his destiny than a tea leaf knows the history of the East India Company. His name is Arthur Dent. He is a 6-foot-tall ape descendant, and someone is trying to drive a bypass through his home.
Come off it, Mr. Dent. You can't win, you know. There's no point in lying down in the path of progress.
I've gone off the idea of progress. It's overrated.
But you must realize that you can't lie in front of bulldozers indefinitely.
I'm game. We'll see who lasts first.
I'm afraid you're going to have to accept it. This bypass has got to be built. And it's going to be built. Nothing you can say or do.
Why it's got to be built?
What do you mean? Why it's got to be built? It's a bypass. You've got to build bypasses.
Did anyone consider the alternatives?
There aren't any alternatives. Look, you're quite entitled to make any suggestions or protests at the appropriate time.
Appropriate time? The first time I knew about it was when a workman arrived at the door yesterday. I asked him if he'd come to clean the windows, and he said he'd come to demolish the house. He didn't tell me straight away, of course. No, first he wiped a couple of windows and charged me a $5. Then he told me.
But Mr. Dent, the plans have been available in the planning office for the last 9 months.
Yes, I went round to find them yesterday afternoon. You hadn't exactly gone out of your way to call much attention to them, had you? I mean, like actually telling anybody or anything.
The plans were on display.
And how many average members of the public are in the habit of casually dropping around at the local planning office of an evening? It's not exactly a noted social venue, is it? And even if you had popped in on the off chance that some raving bureaucrat wanted to knock your house down, the plans weren't immediately obvious to the eye, were they?
That depends where you were looking.
I eventually had to go down to the cellar
That's the display department.
with a torch.
Ah, the lights are probably on.
So had the stairs.
But you found the notice, didn't you?
Yes, it was on display in the bottom of a locked filing cabinet stuck in a disused lavatory with a sign on the door saying, "Beware of the leopard." Ever thought of going into advertising?
It's not as if it's a particularly nice house anyway.
I happen rather to like it.
Mr. Dent,
Hello? Yes.
have you any idea how much damage that bulldozer would suffer if I just let it roll straight over you?
How much?
None at all.
By a strange coincidence, none at all is exactly how much suspicion the ape descendant Arthur Dent had that one of his closest friends was not descended from an ape, but was, in fact, from a small planet somewhere in the vicinity of Betelgeuse. Arthur Dent's failure to suspect this reflects the care with which his friend blended himself into human society after a fairly shaky start. When he first arrived 15 years ago, the minimal research he had done suggested to him that the name Ford Prefect would be nicely inconspicuous. He will enter our story in 35 seconds and say, "Hello, Arthur." The ape descendant will greet him in return, but in deference to a million years of evolution, he will not attempt to pick fleas off of him. Earthmen are not proud of their ancestors and never invite them round to dinner.
Hello, Arthur.
Ford, hi, how are you?
Fine. Look, are you busy?
Well, just got this bulldozer to lie in front of. Otherwise, no, not especially.
There's a pub down the road. Let's have a drink and we can talk.
Look, don't you understand?
Mr. Dent, we are waiting.
Ford, that man wants to knock my house down.
Well, you can do it whilst you're away, can't you?
But I don't want him to.
Well, just ask him to wait till you get back.
Ford,
Arthur, please just listen to me. I'm not fooling. I've got to tell you the most important thing you've ever heard. I've got to tell you now, and I've got to tell you in that pub there.
why?
Because you're going to need a very stiff drink. Now just trust me.
I'll see what I can do. It better be good. Hello, Mr. Prosser.
Yes, Mr. Dent, have you come to your senses yet?
Can we just for a moment assume for the moment that I'm having?
Well,
And that I'm going to be staying put here until you go away?
so,
So you're going to be standing around around all day doing nothing?
could be.
Well, if you're resigned to standing around doing nothing all day, you don't actually need me here all the time, do you?
No, not as such.
So if you can just take it as read that I'm actually here, could I just slip off to the pub for half an hour? How does that sound?
That sounds very reasonable, I think, Mr. Dent. I'm sure we don't actually need you there for the whole time. We can just hold up our end of the confrontation.
And if you want to pop off for a bit later on, I can always cover for you in return.
Oh, thank you, yes. That'll be fine, Mr. Dent. Very kind.
And of course, it goes without saying that you don't try and knock my house over while I'm away.
What? Good Lord, no, Mr. Dent. The mere thought had even begun to speculate about the merest possibility of crossing my mind.
Do you think we can trust him?
Myself, I trust him to the end of the earth.
Yes, but how far is that?
About 12 minutes away. Come on, I need a drink.
By drink, Ford Prefect meant alcohol. The Encyclopedia Galactica describes alcohol as a colorless, volatile liquid formed by the fermentation of sugars and also notes its intoxicating effect on certain carbon-based life forms. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy also mentions alcohol. It says that the best drink in existence is the pan-galactic gargle blaster, the effect of which is like having your brain smashed out with a slice of lemon wrapped around a large gold brick. The guide also tells you on which planets the best pan-galactic gargle blasters are mixed, how much you can expect to pay for one, and what voluntary organizations exist to help you rehabilitate.
6 pints of bitter, and quickly please, the world's about to end.
Oh, yes, sir. Nice weather for it. Going to watch the match this afternoon, sir?
No, no point.
For one conclusion that, you reckon, sir? Arsenal without a chance?
No, it's just that the world's gonna end.
Off, yes, sir. So you said. Lucky escape for Arsenal if it did.
No, not really.
There you are, sir. 6 pints.
Keep the change.
What? From a fiver? Thank you, sir.
You've got 10 minutes left to spend it.
Ford, would you please tell me what the hell is going on? I think I'm beginning to lose my grip on the day.
Drink up, you've got 3 pints to get through.
3 at lunchtime?
Time is an illusion. Lunchtime doubly so.
Very deep. You should send that into the Reader's Digest. They've got a page for people like you.
Drink up.
Why 3 pints?
Muscle relaxant. You'll need it.
Did I do something wrong today? Or has the world always been like this? And I've been too wrapped up in myself to notice.
Alright, I'll try to explain. How long have we known each other, Arthur?
5 years, maybe 6. Most of it seemed to make some kind of sense at the time.
Alright, how would you react if I said that I'm not from Guildford after all, but from a small planet somewhere in the vicinity of Betelgeuse?
I don't know. Why do you think it's the sort of thing you feel you're likely to say?
Drink up, the world's about to end.
This must be Thursday. I never could get the hang of Thursdays. Katsi, thank you so much for reading along with us. So, starting with my left, Atish Grover, also known as Long Writer. He played the role of Mr. Prosser and the barman. Aladya Akshat, he is a writer and a huge fan of the book, and in fact he's the person who introduced the book back to me in 2005. He was playing the narrator. Nandini, the storyteller-in-chief of Project Bibliotherapy, and my partner in crime, she was Fort Prefect, that alien disguised as a human. And I, Nitin Goyal, I played Fort Prefect, the guy who just had the most unusual afternoon ever, literally ever, because the world ended soon enough in the first 3 chapters itself. So this was how the world was introduced to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy back in the day. And would you like to share some memories of the first time you picked up this book and what blew your mind?
It was handed down to me by a senior in college, and the recommendation it came with was, "This will change your life." And it really did, because I started not to panic, because I used to panic a lot. When we are young, we tend to read too much into what is happening. But once I had started to calm down and I read this book, it opened up so many ways in which I could make sense, or even try to make sense of what was happening in life. And the absurd comedy in this book helped a lot. So RIP Douglas Adams, and I hope we can do many more of Towel Days in the future.
Yeah. Nandini?
So, back in 2005, my brother introduced me to the book. That actual copy that he gave me is actually on display over here. And yeah, I mean, I was just beginning to, I was in that angsty teenage phase at the time, and I was just beginning to get into satire and humor and stuff. And Douglas Adams' style just blew me away. Like, if you read even a paragraph of his work, it's like, it's very irreverent, it's very unexpected. It's like he'll start the sentence a certain way, and at the end it just completely ends up being something unexpected and hilarious. And it's like, many people mistake this book for sci-fi, but it's actually happens to be set in outer space, but it's more of a satirical take on life, the universe and everything. So yeah.
Indeed, like the universe and everything. 42, so which is also part of your publishing house, Cable 42. So how has that number been special for you?
Yeah, I mean, once I read the book, and you know, normally science fiction books are very serious, and you know, the first time I read the book, you know, it was so funny and hilarious, and you know, it deals with this question, and normally science fiction books, they don't discuss this subject at all, right? About you know, our purpose in life, and you know, trying to find the ultimate answer to, you know, what is it that we're doing here, and the answer to that, what Douglas Adams mentioned in the book, is 42. And you know, I found that, I mean, you expect very serious answers, but I mean, the answer itself is so simple. And what Douglas Adams said is that what is more important, the answer is the question. So once you learn to ask the right questions, you know, that's more important than actually knowing what the answer is. So you know, that's how the number 42, you know, that's the answer, right? So that's what we're all looking for. So that's why the number is kind of, we we all connect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty interesting story how he came up with that number.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, they go into crazy wild theories of this has to do something with the demons, or the number 42 is mentioned in Alice in Wonderland, so it could be a reference to that. He just wanted a small number, an even number, because odd numbers are odd. He was looking outside his window, he thought 42 will do, and it clearly did, because so at Project Bibliotherapy, we have been curating the best of what we've read over the years, and we've come up with zines where it's easy for you to scan and access the best of the internet without escaping into rabbit holes. So something which was published back in the day, we make it easy for you to scan with a simple click. So we launched 42 Goodreads of the internet last year, and we've come up with a new publication which we'll be sharing soon with every copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or any of his other works. One which we recommend highly is Last Chance to See, where he went with a wildlife conversationalist all over the world in search of some of the most endangered species of animals like the kakapo parrot, the Komodo dragon, the whale in the Yangtze River, the Yangtze River dolphin actually, which unfortunately is now extinct. He did this back in 1990. And just one thing which I wanted to point out, that at the end of his year of traveling all over the world in search of animals, his final destination was a place in China, which a lot of us would be familiar with, unfortunately, a town called Wuhan. So the last words of this book, the last words which Douglas Adams wrote of non-fiction, they're these. The bats are doing just fine. There are hundreds of them. I have a terrible feeling that we are in trouble.
Predicting the future, right? You are
As
always
always.
good at that.
Yeah.
So this book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, was written in 1978. We weren't around on Earth at that time, and neither were computers or the internet. And yet he envisioned a future in which you could hold a tablet-like thing in your hand, which has access to information from all over the world, which is cloud space. So,
Also known as smartphones.
also known as the internet, which can be terribly distracting. So over here at Project Bibliotherapy, we help you, we nudge you to read more. We curate the best of what we've read, and we want to talk about the publications.
Yeah, so we are actually in the process of launching 6 publications this July. When we say publications, these will be available on the platform called Substack. So if you subscribe with your email, you get whatever we post there directly in your inbox. And each of the publications is on a different topic. So one is called Don't Panic, Don't Try, which is a work in progress book by Nitin about his travels around the world in the past 5 years. And the second one is a lifestyle, fashion and culture magazine by me called Sartorial Secrets, which I actually started in 2015, but I'm kind of evolving it into a different space now. We also have this publication called The Time Machine, which is a very nostalgic take on the 90s and 80s. So both Nitin and I have an insane collection of stuff from the 80s and 90s. So we've got back issues of books, we've got back issues of magazines like Sports Star and Chip. I've got a ton of vintage comics. We both have our Tazo collections even now, and a whole bunch of memorabilia from that time, which we'll be showcasing in different ways. We also have a lot of really beautiful books from the Soviet era in our possession, which are out of print now. So you don't really get them anywhere else. And on our Kidlit publication, we are planning to showcase these for anyone who wants to encourage their young children to read, for kids to discover new stories that we may not see. And then we also have Biblioromance, which is about our adventures on the road, and our releases so far with Project Bibliotherapy as it evolves, as we speak. And then we have the Tavern of Misfits, which is about music, movies, and video games. So yeah, I've got them all.
Yeah, so all 6 of them would have an issue every month in your inbox straight away, which would have stuff written by us plus recommendations. So each of them would be priced at $20 per year. But for the first 10,000 readers, our readers who love what we read and would like to read more and follow us in our reading journey, we've kept it as pay as you wish. So whether you're in school or you've retired from work and want to get back to reading, or you want to get started but don't know where to begin, just hop on board and pay as you wish, and we'll give you access for a year to all our publications, and you could cultivate your own library, build your own library, and with places like Kunzum, people like Subir and Shruti and Ajay who are setting this up, like actually creating spaces which we dreamt of growing up, like a lot of bookstores. They were great, but there wasn't a space to connect with fellow readers. And in the past 2 years, we've all just had a break from humanity, and it's good to be stepping back outside and into places like these where, and thank you, Bharti, for publishing these magnificent copies of the greatest book in the galaxy. This one's especially special for us. So this March 11th was Douglas Adams' birthday, and we launched a giveaway on Instagram where we gave 42 copies of these to whoever participated and won. And yeah,
We
this
tied up with independent bookstores across Delhi to source these copies. And at one point, we actually overheard someone saying that someone on the phone, one of the bookshops we inquired it at, that Delhi was actually facing a shortage of this book because we had ordered so many. So yeah.
So this is, we consider it to be the greatest book in the galaxy, and it's the first recommendation which automatically pops up in our mind to anyone, whether you read fiction, non-fiction, whether you had PTSD from textbooks, whatever it is, or your attention span could just use a reboot. This works brilliantly. Just read the first 3 chapters, and yeah, just the first 3 chapters. Don't be daunted by its size. It's like 5 books in one, which were written between 1979 and 1992. It's called the Trilogy of 5. So this is a book which, if you haven't had the chance to read yet, I'm jealous of you. We are so jealous of you that you get to experience it for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you. This was us.
Thanks for being here and sharing this moment with us.
Yeah. Keep your towel at hand, always.